So as part of our 20th anniversary celebrations in 2024, Pharos Architectural Controls is spotlighting 20 people and products that have helped to shape our company and our products and continue to inspire us every day. And Bas Hoxbergen from Pharos and I are very excited today to be joined by Rutger van Dijk from SemMika BV to talk about the Naturalis Biodiversity Centre in Holland and how Pharos products have helped to bring his clients' vision to life. Rutger, Bas, it's absolutely great to have you both along today for this chat. Thanks, Rutger, for your time to dig into this. And Bas, I'm gonna let you lead the charge and let's chat about your experiences with Pharos.
Thank you for the introduction, Amy, and Rutger. Great to meet you here, and thanks for your time. For those who don't know you, can you give a little bit of background about yourself? And
yes, no problem, of course. Well, my name is Rutger, and I have a jubilee in 2024 as well. I just checked, and it's my 40th year in lighting technology. I started in 1984 as a theater technician and basically did a lot of programming on Compolite, because Compolite at that time was the brand in theater lighting control. Actually, of course, only conventional lighting, controlling dimmers, maybe even a scroller, but that was it. And later on, 10 years later, I was one of the first moving light programmers or operators, how they call it here in Holland, and did some, well, first scanners and later with moving heads, also with a lot of Compolite animators and all and about. Later became, after, well, 2 years of being the technical show supervisor for the first Cirque du Soleil show in Europe, which was a step back from lighting more into complete rock and roll theater management. I became the manager of Fairy Light in the Netherlands, so I was also a little bit known of the artisan and the virtuoso, but was more the manager than the operator. And from, let's say, about 2000, I start working less on live entertainment, but more in fixed installations. So museums, experience, restaurants, things like that. And more show control than lighting control, basically, because, lighting control was okay, but show control was much more sexier at that time. Now everybody does it, but at that time it was still something special. And I worked with Medialon, Elko McBride, little later EQ systems, in which I set up a lot of museums here in Holland. And I think, well, that's basically it, what I did. And and the last, well, that's about now 8, 9, 10 years. I'm doing this as a freelance consultant / programmer, not connected to any brand or company. So any client can hire me and I tell him what he should do in museum world.
And I think we met about 7 or 8 years ago when I joined Pharos, mainly because of your work for permanent installations in museums. But you were already working with Pharos for some time then. Do you remember when you encountered Pharos for the first time?
Yeah, the first time was, I think I checked it in my agenda because I expected the question, was 2008 or 2009 on one of the Plaza shows at Earl's Court, where I met Chris and Nick, and I was very, very impressed by their system, and mainly because it was working on a Mac, and being kind of an Apple fan, I always hated to have a Windows laptop only to program EQ or a Medialon or any other system. So I was really happy to see that some cool guys from London made a system that I could use with my normal MacBook, or maybe even PowerBook at that time, I can't remember. And so we started to do the first little museum projects with Pharos. And the initial attraction was, of course, the Apple, but the second biggest attraction, or the capabilities of the trigger machine, made it that at the end it became the favorite controller. I still use also other systems, but well, less and less, to be honest. And like we did, like the Amstel Hotel, which is one of the most fancy hotels in Amsterdam, or Concertgebouw, which is the concert hall of Amsterdam. But also, for instance, the National Military Museum, which is a big building full of armory stuff, and is also, I think, running at about 12 or 13 LPCs altogether.
And that's
So
been
that's
running for quite some time now, correct?
yeah, there was, I think it opened in 2014, 15, something like that. I mean,
today we're here to talk about the Naturalis Biodiversity Centre, a large museum in Leiden, the Netherlands. I think you've been involved from the very, very start with that. Can you tell a little bit about the timescale of that project?
yeah, it was my first project to be when I started to be freelancer after leaving my own company, which was more like an AV lighting design show control company. And Naturalis was one of the first that asked me from, hey, now you're completely independent. Can you help us sit at our table? And I think it was 2017. And of course, it's the largest natural history museum. And I already worked for Naturalis when they built their first building. This is their second newly built building. So I knew a couple of people over there. And they asked me to be the technical designer for the audiovisual systems and the exhibits. And also because there was a lighting design also involved, only for the show control and the lighting control. So not for the lighting itself, but only for the control. Because the lighting designer left the projects, they also asked me, can you also be doing the whole AV and lighting tender system? And so that was, I think we're already talking about 2 years later then. And then when the tender was won by two companies, one lighting and an AV company, it became, they asked me, can you also be the project leader for everything? And that turned out to be also when you're here as a project leader and you're the best one to know how to program it, you can easily also program the whole show. So it was a strange project because we had, I think it was 7, 8, or 9 big exhibition halls, and any of them had their own exhibition designer, lighting designer, sound designer. So we had one company, one technical designer, but a lot of content designers. So it was hard to get all of them in the same kind of way of working. Some lighting designers were much easier than the others. Well, we all know that, of course. But at the end, that worked perfectly for lighting control, for starting AV. Just to get all the exhibits running. That was quite, I would say, 3 weeks work, and all the programming was done. So that was great.
And you mentioned, right, there's like 7 to 9 exhibition halls, but there is also a overarching building management system, I believe. How were you involved with the requirements that, let's say, the central management system had towards the show control systems within the exhibition halls?
Yeah, what they had is they built their own, it was not really the building system, but it was based from the ICT part of the company, that they wanted to have control over everything that is a controller, a PC, or a projector speaker, or whatever. So they designed their own system, and because I said, because they already found out that talking timelines, talking DMX, talking streaming ACN, all those stuff they couldn't do. So we said, okay, then every hall or exhibition hall will have an own show controller, which is only controlled by their big museum-wide exhibition system. And it was all done on UDP commands.
Yeah, and I think that integration, right? I support you on some parts of this project, so I'm a bit aware of some of these parts. I
want to say I remember when I was needing your help, because it was not for the experience where we were originally would start talking about, but it was for the Japanese theater. I don't know if you can remember that.
Yeah.
Because there was a smaller experience in one of the exhibition rooms, and it was sold by one of the set builders to have an animatronics, but it turned out to be an animatronics working on serial commands without any controller with it. So I was really a little bit with my, how do you call in Holland, with my hands in my hair from how can we do this? And so I called Bas, which I met at ISE, I think a year or two before of that, and said, well, there must be something to be possible to do to get the DMX controlling serial commands. So Bas wrote me a perfect script, which is still running and works.
Because I actually recall this project indeed. It was interesting, right? Because your challenge was to control serial commands to animatronics, and in the end, Pharos as a lighter controller was able to do all the things needed to do in a easier way than other systems might be able to do it. And
definitely.
So we had this hole, right? And I guess some other holes were more, I guess, generic with just controlling the lighting, right? The big T-Rex over there. And I think you also mentioned, right, because of the needs, initially not all of these holes were equipped with Pharos, and what do you...
It was, I would say 50-50. All the holes had dynamic lighting, which timelines with more than one preset to say, was mainly going to Pharos system, but there were also some holes that didn't need that big dynamics, and because of every body wanted to have also a system where you can record DMX protocols, because every lighting designer had his own way of working. We worked with Visual Productions for that system, and well, that worked as well, but in the end, it was a little bit hard that you really have to go, okay, I'm going to control now exhibit hall 6. Which system did it have again?
Well, as you are aware, right, we're very happy that we have been recently able to add the DMX recording feature, because we are aware that the need for certain installations it's a requirement that we are very happy we can fulfill.
And I'm very happy with that. It was a little bit too late for another big project for me, but it was still, it's there now. That's great.
It's there now, exactly.
The whole museum, I think, opened in 2019 or something. It was at least just before the whole COVID pandemic started, and one of the rooms wasn't ready, and it was the experience. And because of the whole COVID pandemic, it also took some extra years, because it's a very small room, and you go in with 25 people in small rooms, so it was not allowed to open it for years and years. So we had a lot of time to program it and to fine tune it and to snaggle it to the right set.
This may be good to explain a bit more, right? Because a museum, I think, even though people will. Not all people will have been to Naturalis. Most of the museum, right? It's exhibitions. People will understand what it is. But this experience part, right? It's more like a dark ride almost within a museum. Can you explain a bit more? Let's say about the experience people encounter in their experience.
It's what you say. It's a dark ride. It's not Star Tours, but it's getting there. It's like people come in like a little bit like an airplane terminal, and they are asked to be very clean and go in and sit in their let's say pod, and with that pod you go back in time, and you go back to the ages where Trix, that's one of the main attractions of the Natural History Museum, that's a Tyrannosaurus Rex, one of the best found species in I think in Utah or something. So they designed a whole experience around it, so you can't not only see her skeleton, but you can also see her alive. And so it was with a 4D cinema, so it's a 3D cinema. So you had active glasses on, going in back to time. Then you crash because something goes wrong, and then you get into the forest where Trix is walking, and she's lost one of her babies, so she's very angry. And then just in time, you can open a wormhole and go back in time and be back in Holland in 2024. So that's the story, and it's a real animatronics, a real nice one. It's not like not what you see with a lot of those dino exhibitions where it just moves a little bit, but this is really a great one with a good 3D cinema, with 4D cinema chairs and everything. So it's quite some show.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting, right, to mention, because indeed, right, you're describing here what is happening, and therefore there's a lot of requirements in terms of making sure the chairs vibrate at the right moment of time, that the video is started, the lighting is started, the doors are opening at the right time, etc., etc. At the same time, when you're programming it right, you want to be sure that the doors are open so you can easily walk around. It's really show control that was the requirement for this project. And I mean, I like it, right? People know Pharos mainly about the dynamic lighting control. And we just spoke before about this Japanese puppet, right? Sometimes it being used to do some other things, but in this case, it really was doing show control. You worked with a lot of show control systems in the past. Are there specific features that you like best from the Pharos system where you said, right, this really allowed me to program the show control in a good way?
Good question. I would almost dare to say that Pharos is more a show controller than a lighting controller, but that's me. And of course, you have those big show control systems like Medialon, like Alcomer Bright, which could of course also do this, but a little bit harder to get there. Having the overview. What I like about the Pharos system is that all the triggers are found in one page. So you don't have, you have also a system where you can say, okay, if this lighting cue is triggered, also do this. But it's not showing somewhere in the trigger list because it's just a part of a light cue. And that's what I really like about Pharos, that everything is in one place. And although sometimes it's hard, so because you don't have the live show, because the live show only works for lighting and not for, like, let's say, Ethernet or serial commands or anything. But on the other hand, what I really, really love about it is that the system, it's like a solid state system. If you upload it and it works once, it will work for 1,000 times. And a lot of show controllers like Medialon are working on a Windows machine, and you can it's still a PC running an application. And that's what I really love about Pharos, that it never fails. It never failed me after it's running perfectly.
Yes, I think, well, that's really what we try indeed.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and what I really liked about when we started with this experience is it was for me at that time new is the IO module manage mode, which could be used as like, well, in Medialon they would have called it like a variable but fixed systems. And this made it possible to have an experience show which is running on a timeline, but it's not one timeline. It's I would say it's 16 timelines, and all timelines are independent of each other, but depending on each other.
Well,
so
yeah. I remember that from this project, right? The fact that those were different rooms, and that the overall time, there was no overall timing, right? The different rooms needed to interact with each other. And of course, doors could not open if the next part of the venue was not ready. At the same time, right? The logic around that, I know there was quite a nice challenge to get into the system. But I think
if somebody would stay stuck in the door because he was just standing there, the door wouldn't shut because it's all of kind of IR sensors in it. That would have an influence on the rest of the timeline. So there were a lot of pause and go situations, which even also included that the audience at 2 times of the show has an interaction. If they press a button, something happens. If they don't press a button, after a while it still happens, so otherwise they stay in the dark for the whole day. But they had some influence, which it made it harder to get it as a one running show.
What I like to see on the interfaces you did to during programming to make life easier, that there was really a button made coffee.
Yeah.
That allowed you to go, right, I need to go on a coffee break. There's a coffee break button. I really liked remembering seeing that one.
That opened all the doors, put on the work light, and because otherwise we needed some fresh air in it. So the doors opening was a big part of the coffee break. But it was a big show. I think we made about 500 plus triggers. And of course, the trigger was sometimes had more than one action, or we had, I think, 14, 15 different manage modules used.
It's definitely been one of the more complicated shows I've been ever involved in. Yeah. And I liked as well, right, in the end, one show controller, one lighting controller to right, keep it simple to some extent, as in this is everything lighting, we keep that on one controller, everything show control on one controller. Could it have been combined? Well, possibly, but this really allowed to make it work and do the integration with the central management system, what we spoke about before, right? The fire alarms and everything.
It was very important because we used one LPC as a main controller, which was like the brains of the whole experience, where everybody was at the same time if doors opens and close. But what happens inside of a show was on the other LPC. So you could run, or you could change lighting control or video control without hurting the whole main system. That was for me the way, because it was also 2 different show files. It was not one show on 2 LPCs. And lighting, of course, was still something, but it was a small part of it. I just found out, I checked it to see, maybe you would ask it. It was 666 DMAX channels only. So
okay.
There was...
Indeed, that was not, but indeed all the other show control bits were impressive, right? Whether it was the audio, whether it was the doors, whether it was the animations, which indeed, and it's a shame you can't see it, Amy, because really the animations over there, that was very impressive to see. Yeah. I mean, I've been there once, or I've been there sometimes, of course, before, and one time with my kids, and it was great to be there and see them, their reactions when everything comes to life, I would say.
Yeah,
absolutely. It sounds absolutely incredible. I think it really shows, as you say, stands to the kind of the complexity that these systems can really sort of handle, and takes it into completely new realms that you're able to to add in so many different details and data points to get what sounds like an incredible outcome. I think it should definitely be on everybody's bucket list to go and take a look, and
definitely
go and meet T-Rex in in her natural habitat. It sounds absolutely amazing. And just thank you, Rutger, for giving us your time to be able to explain just in that level of detail just how Pharos systems have enabled you to really achieve a really complex and fantastic project. So thank you so much. It's been really
You're welcome.
Thank you.